While my son exchanged vows with California's most eligible heiress at $1 million wedding, I sat 3,000 miles away in a New York CFA, deliberately missing what everyone called the wedding of the century. But they didn't know the real reason behind my absence or the devastating betrayal that led me to this moment. Spent decades sacrificing everything for my son, and he threw me away like garbage. Tell me I am not the only mother who has experienced this kind of heartbreak. Comment your location below. It helps to know there are people listening to an old woman's pain. Hit subscribe, because what I discovered next will shock you. On the wedding day, the San Francisco sky showed the most beautiful weather I could remember. Though I wasn't there to see it myself, my former colleague Susan described the scene for me later. She told me how the sunlight poured like liquid gold across the perfect lawns of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, where Richard and Brittany stood beneath an arch of white roses, looking like royalty from a fairy tale. Meanwhile, I, Evelyn Moore, the mother of the groom, sat 3,000 miles away in a quiet cafe overlooking Central Park in New York City. Through the window, I watched horse-drawn carriages roll slowly past, their gentle clip-clop sounds mixing with the constant buzzing of my silenced phone. I had ordered a hot latte, and its rich smell seemed to wrap around me like a shield, protecting me from whatever urgent messages were piling up on my device. I knew exactly who was trying to reach me. Maybe it was Richard himself, or Brittany, or some well-meaning friend they'd asked to call. They all wanted answers to the same burning question: why was the groom's mother missing from what society magazines were already calling the wedding of the century? What they didn't understand was that I wasn't truly absent at all. I had simply chosen to be present for my own life instead. The breakdown of everything hadn't happened overnight. Like a tiny crack in a foundation, it had grown slowly and quietly over 5 long years, widened bit by steady drops of indifference and contempt, until it became a gap that couldn't be crossed. My name is Evelyn Moore, and at 67, I am a retired high school English teacher. My life has been simple and ordinary by most standards, perhaps even unremarkable to many people. There was one shining exception to this ordinary life: my son, Richard White. I had raised him alone for 25 years, and he had been the source of all my pride and joy. Now 38, he'd built a successful career as a real estate developer and was about to marry Brittany Sterling, an heiress from one of California's most prominent families. I should have been thrilled for him, and in the beginning, I truly was. The first tiny crack in our relationship appeared so subtly that it was nearly invisible. 5 years ago, at the elegant engagement party, Brittany stood with a crystal champagne flute in her manicured hand, speaking in carefully modulated tones to her circle of glamorous friends. Her words drifted across the room with devastating clarity. Evelyn is a lovely teacher naturally. But you must understand that teaching is such a modest profession. She simply does not comprehend the dynamics of our social sphere. The volume was conversational, yet somehow every syllable reached my ears with perfect precision. At the time, I managed an awkward smile and convinced myself that no malice was intended. As months passed, Richard began to change as well. After one particularly pleasant family dinner, I inadvertently overheard him speaking to a friend on his phone, his voice carrying a note of embarrassment I had never heard before.
My mother?
Oh, she means well. It is just that she has absolutely no sense of style. Her clothing choices are always so terribly dowdy and outdated. I glanced down at the soft wool cardigan I was wearing, a cherished piece I had owned for 3 years. It was my favorite garment, both warm and comfortable, a reliable companion through countless seasons. Apparently, in my son's evolving worldview, this beloved sweater represented everything that was wrong with me. I soothed my wounded feelings with rational explanations. Perhaps I am being overly sensitive. They are simply preoccupied with their demanding lives. Richard is under tremendous pressure at work. Surely he did not intend to be cruel. I continued to support him quietly, just as I always had throughout his life. When he purchased a new luxury automobile, I transferred $5,000 to his account without being asked. When he mentioned in passing that his company was experiencing temporary cash flow difficulties, I provided $10,000 from my carefully accumulated savings. I believed this was what maternal love looked like in action. The turning point arrived 3 months ago, when wedding preparations reached a crescendo of activity, and that hairline crack finally split wide open into an unbridgeable divide. The wedding invitation arrived on the finest ivory-colored cardstock, adorned with elaborate gold lettering that spoke of refinement and expense. The formal script read, "Mr. and Mrs. Harold Sterling request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter, Brittany Rose to Richard James White." I searched every line, every curve of that expensive calligraphy, but my name appeared nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. Tucked carelessly into the corner of the heavy envelope was a small piece of notepaper that seemed like a hasty afterthought, bearing Richard's familiar scrawl, "Mom, if you have time, you can come and sit in the back row." I held that crumpled note in my trembling hands, feeling as though its edges were sharp enough to slice through my very soul. I immediately dialed his number, my voice betraying the shock that was coursing through my veins. "Richard, sweetheart, why is my name not included on the invitation? Surely this is some kind of mistake." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity before Brittany's crisp, emotionless voice filled the void. Clearly, I was on speakerphone, transformed into a public spectacle for their mutual entertainment. "Evelyn, you need to understand that this is a Sterling family-hosted event. We cannot have the guests feeling confused about protocol and hierarchy." Before I could fully process this devastating statement, I heard Richard's voice chiming in from somewhere in the background, offering his eager support. "Absolutely, Mom. Brittany knows best about these things. Besides, it is really just a meaningless formality anyway." A formality. 25 years of my unwavering dedication, countless sacrifices, and boundless love had been reduced, in his casual dismissal, to nothing more than a meaningless formality that could be discarded without a second thought. That evening, I poured myself a generous glass of red wine and sat in my darkened living room, surrounded by photographs spanning decades of our life together. I attempted to rationalize everything away. They are simply overwhelmed with the complexity of planning such a grand event. Richard just wants to avoid upsetting Brittany during this stressful time. Everything will surely return to normal after the wedding passes. To prove this optimistic theory to myself, and perhaps to fill the growing void in my chest, I transferred $2,000 to Richard's account with the notation, "For additional wedding decorations with love." His response arrived within minutes, a brief text message, "Thanks, Mom. Love you too." Staring at those 3 simple words on my phone screen, I temporarily convinced myself that everything was forgiven and forgotten. The following weeks brought humiliations that abandoned all pretense of subtlety. I telephoned Richard to ask what style of dress would be most appropriate for me to wear to his wedding. Brittany immediately commandeered the conversation, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness that made my skin crawl. "Oh, Evelyn, darling, we have already confirmed exactly 300 guests, and our seating budget is stretched to its absolute limit. If you absolutely insist on attending, you might need to sit near the kitchen service area. Assures me the food is quite acceptable there." The kitchen. She wanted the mother of the groom to sit with the kitchen staff. I immediately sent Richard a carefully worded text message, requesting clarification about this shocking arrangement. His reply arrived 30 minutes later. "Mom, Brittany really did not mean anything hurtful by that suggestion. She has just been under incredible stress lately, but she did mention that she would prefer you not appear in the main wedding photographs. She feels it might negatively impact the overall aesthetic vision." Impact the aesthetic vision. I, a 67-year-old mother whose face bore the honest lines of a lifetime spent caring for others, would somehow compromise the visual perfection of his fairy tale wedding. I could not bring myself to respond to that message. Instead, I dressed carefully and went to the most prestigious department store downtown, where I selected an $800 set of English Royal Doulton bone china with trembling but determined hands. I reasoned that if my appearance was not sufficiently polished for their refined tastes, perhaps my love could at least be expressed through an appropriately expensive gesture. Exactly 1 week later, a package appeared at my apartment door. Inside the carefully packed box was my thoughtfully chosen tea service, returned in perfect condition without even being unwrapped. A note in Brittany's elegant handwriting was attached to the packaging, too modest for our registry selections. In that devastating moment, something fundamental inside my heart shattered beyond any possibility of repair. The true awakening occurred on what seemed like an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I was shopping at my usual grocery store when I encountered Jessica, one of Richard's closest friends from college. She rushed toward me with genuine enthusiasm lighting up her face. "Aunt Evelyn, what a wonderful surprise. I heard the exciting news about Richard's wedding. My heartiest congratulations. I received their beautiful invitation yesterday. Everything looks absolutely magical." I managed to arrange my features into something resembling a smile. "Yes, thank you so much, Jessica. That is very kind." She looked puzzled for a moment before continuing with innocent curiosity. "You must be one of the featured speakers at the ceremony, correct? I imagine Richard has planned a special moment to honor you publicly. After all, you are his mother." My throat constricted painfully, and I felt every carefully constructed pretense crumbling beneath her guileless gaze. I took a deep, steadying breath and spoke in a voice so calm it sounded foreign even to my own ears. "Actually, I am not scheduled to speak at all. To be perfectly honest, I am barely invited to attend." The radiant smile vanished from Jessica's face as though I had struck her physically, her eyes filled with genuine disbelief and horror. "Wait, what did you just say? That cannot possibly be true. That is absolutely terrible." Her shock served as an unforgiving mirror reflecting a truth I had been desperately trying to avoid acknowledging. This was not protective discretion, nor was it simply wedding stress, and it certainly was not some innocent oversight. This was deliberate, calculated public humiliation. The entire world knew that Richard had a devoted mother, yet his wedding was systematically attempting to erase that mother from existence. That evening, I did not shed a single tear. Instead, I sat at the sturdy dining table I had used for 30 years and opened my laptop computer. I spent the entire night methodically reviewing all my financial records, text message conversations, and email exchanges from the past decade. I opened a password-protected folder containing meticulous records of every dollar I had saved and sacrificed for Richard's benefit, his college tuition payments, the substantial down payment for his first apartment, even the $15,000 I had generously provided when he and Brittany embarked on their first European vacation together. I retrieved my calculator and carefully added every single transaction. Over the past 10 years, drawn from my modest retirement income and carefully accumulated savings, I had contributed a total of $127,450 toward Richard and Brittany's increasingly luxurious lifestyle. The stark numbers glowing on my calculator screen instantly burned away the fog of sadness that had been clouding my judgment for months. In its place came a crystalline clarity that chilled me to the bone. I, Evelyn Moore, was not some disposable background character in their glamorous story. I was a major investor. And now, the time had arrived to liquidate this catastrophically failed investment. By dawn, my plan of action was completely formulated. My first communication went to my longtime friend and attorney, David Richardson. "Can you clear your schedule to meet with me tomorrow morning? This concerns immediate changes to my will and estate planning." My second step involved opening my laptop and using my personal savings to purchase a first-class airline ticket to New York City, scheduled for the exact date and time of the wedding ceremony. My third step was crafting a detailed anonymous message to the prestigious wedding planning firm Brittany had hired. Writing as a concerned legal professional, I meticulously outlined all the potential legal complications surrounding this union, particularly emphasizing that Richard, a rapidly ascending real estate developer with substantial assets, was marrying a wealthy heiress without any prenuptial agreement whatsoever. I suggested the enormous financial risks this arrangement could create for the Sterling family under California's community property laws, and recommended they seek immediate legal counsel. As I executed each element of my plan, my heart remained as calm as a mountain lake. This was not petty revenge. This was simply restoring proper balance to an equation that had become dangerously skewed. 3 days before the scheduled wedding, Richard telephoned me. His voice carried an unmistakable note of irritation and impatience. "Mom, Brittany wants to have a conversation with you. She has decided it would be much better if you simply stayed home this weekend," she says. "The venue has become too crowded." I laughed, and the sound that emerged was like crystal shattering against stone. "Richard, darling, I have seen the photographs online. That venue comfortably accommodates 300 people. Can I ask you something important? During these 25 years when I raised you completely alone, was I ever too big for your life?" "Mom, please do not be so dramatic about everything. Answer my question. Was I too big, too ugly, too embarrassing for your precious life? You are not being fair right now. Fair, you want to discuss fairness. Raising a child alone on a teacher's modest salary while working second jobs to pay for your college education. That was fair. Having your wife publicly announce that she is ashamed to acknowledge me, that is what qualifies as unfair." I ended the call without the slightest tremor in my hands. The day before the wedding, Brittany telephoned me personally. Her voice flowed like honey that had been laced with arsenic. "Evelyn, sweetheart, about tomorrow's festivities. We have arranged such a lovely little surprise for you. We have made reservations for you to have an extended lunch with my elderly Aunt Constance while the ceremony takes place. Is that not incredibly thoughtful of us?" Brittany, I received your wedding invitation in my mailbox. It specifically indicated +1 status. Do you comprehend what that designation means? It means I am being treated like a casual acquaintance who might bring along a guest, not like the mother who gave birth to and raised the groom. Her artificially sweet tone immediately transformed into something sharp and menacing. "Do not you dare even consider ruining this perfect day for us." I have no intention of ruining anything whatsoever. I am simply going to absent myself entirely, and I am going to do something much more interesting with my time instead. I disconnected the call and immediately turned off my phone. I walked slowly to the mirror in my bedroom closet and looked at the unopened dress box sitting on my dresser. I had once imagined wearing it while watching my son exchange vows with pride radiating from every fiber of my being. I looked at that box with complete emotional detachment, as though it contained artifacts from someone else's abandoned life. I pushed it to the very back of my closet where it would remain untouched. The wedding ceremony unfolded exactly as Brittany had envisioned. Golden sunshine, orchestral music, flowing champagne, and a smile on her face so triumphant, it bordered on gloating. However, there was an undeniable void in the gathering that several people noticed immediately. Numerous elderly relatives approached Richard throughout the reception, asking the same question. "Where is your dear mother today?" He found himself repeating the same rehearsed explanation over and over. "She is not feeling well and decided to rest at home." Brittany stood beside him throughout these conversations, her arm linked possessively through his, whispering with satisfaction, "Do not worry about their questions," without her here making everything awkward. "We can have the perfect celebration we always dreamed of." Richard looked at his new bride, and for the first time since their engagement, he felt an inexplicable sense of unease stirring deep in his chest. 1 week after the wedding, while Richard and Brittany were honeymooning in the crystal blue waters of the Maldives, enjoying unlimited sunshine and luxury, an email from attorney David Richardson shattered their tropical paradise completely. The subject line read simply, "Official notice regarding substantive changes to the last will and testament of Mrs. Evelyn Moore." Richard clicked on the attachment with curious fingers, and suddenly the azure ocean and endless blue sky before him transformed into a blinding white void of shock and disbelief. "I, Evelyn Moore, being of sound mind and body, hereby declare that I am donating all real estate properties registered under my name in San Francisco and Los Angeles, as well as $450,000 from my carefully managed investment portfolio, to the California Foundation for Supporting Women and Children Victims of Domestic Violence. My beachfront villa property in Malibu will be donated in its entirety to established charitable organizations focused on elder care and advocacy. The remaining 10% of my total assets will be bequeathed to my son, Richard James White." At the conclusion of the legal document, there was a handwritten note in that achingly familiar script, which now pierced his heart like a sword forged from regret. Because my son consciously chose to disrespect and humiliate his mother, I now choose to disrespect his financial expectations entirely. Have you completely lost your mind? Richard immediately called his mother, his voice distorted beyond recognition by raw panic and fury. Mom, what is this insanity? $450,000 to some domestic violence foundation, the deed to the Malibu house to charity organizations? Are you having some kind of mental breakdown? His mother's voice on the other end was more terrifyingly calm than he had ever heard it. No, Richard, I am finally thinking with perfect clarity. For 38 years I believed that love meant unlimited forgiveness and endless tolerance. I thought being a good mother meant accepting any treatment without complaint or consequence. I was profoundly mistaken about everything. Richard's voice cracked with desperation. But we can fix this terrible misunderstanding. Let me explain everything to Brittany properly. We can work this out. There is absolutely nothing left to explain or fix. You made your choices with full awareness of the consequences. Now you must live with the results. I have already sent copies of this will to several major news outlets. The story of how a successful real estate developer and his wealthy socialite wife systematically humiliated his 67-year-old mother while she was financially supporting their lavish lifestyle has proven quite fascinating to journalists. The line went dead. Richard stood frozen on their luxury resort balcony, and for the first time in his life, the tropical Maldivian sunshine made him feel chilled to his very bones. Brittany emerged from their suite, noticed his devastated expression, and frowned with annoyance. What is wrong with you now? Acting like the world is ending over a little money. You really need to start behaving like a man. Richard looked at his new wife and realized for the first time how cold and calculating she appeared beneath her polished exterior beauty. 2 weeks after the wedding, the San Francisco Chronicle featured a prominent story in their human interest section. The headline read, "The Wedding He Wanted to Forget: How a Real Estate Mogul Abandoned the Mother Who Raised Him." The author was one of my former students, now serving as editor-in-chief of the newspaper. He did not resort to sensational language or emotional manipulation, but simply presented the facts with devastating clarity. The article included screenshots of some text message exchanges I had provided, such as too modest for our registry selections, along with detailed records of the $127,450 I had transferred over the past decade. He also conducted interviews with Jessica and several other friends who knew the complete situation intimately. The article spread across social media platforms like wildfire. The hashtag Mother's Day Justices received over 3 million views within 24 hours of publication. I deliberately avoided reading the public comments. David informing me about the overwhelming support was sufficient. Within 3 days of the article's publication, Brittany's reputation became a source of ridicule within high society circles, and several prestigious charity gala organizers politely removed her from their exclusive invitation lists. Even some of Richard's longtime friends publicly expressed their support for my actions on various social media platforms. In David's law office the following week, he handed me a thick folder of documents. "Evelyn, we have successfully filed all the beneficiary change forms with the appropriate institutions. Your son can certainly challenge this will in court if he chooses, but given our extensive documented evidence of emotional abuse and financial manipulation, he will not prevail. More importantly, any legal challenge will become very, very public, which will only amplify the negative publicity." He paused thoughtfully before continuing. "We are also preparing to file a comprehensive civil lawsuit against Richard and Brittany for intentional infliction of emotional distress, seeking full compensation for all the payments you made over the past 10 years, totaling $127,450, plus substantial additional damages for psychological suffering. The total settlement demand could easily reach $250,000. I gazed out the window as San Francisco's famous morning fog was gradually lifting, revealing the city I had called home for decades. I had spent 40 years as an educator, teaching my students about Shakespeare and Hemingway, instructing them about the transformative power of language and literature. I never imagined that one day I would need to use those same tools to defend my own dignity and self-worth. One of my former students, now serving as a judge on the California Supreme Court, telephoned me personally. Her voice carried warmth and unwavering conviction. "Teacher, you absolutely did the right thing. Personal dignity is something no one can take away from you unless you allow them to." Another former student, now a renowned psychologist and author, wrote a compelling column about my situation. Evelyn Moore's story is not about petty revenge or bitterness, but rather about how a woman courageously redefined the boundaries of family obligation and unconditional love. She demonstrates that genuine love does not require bottomless tolerance of abuse and disrespect. I had once promised Richard, "Your mother will always be your strongest supporter and advocate." Now I finally understood that the true meaning of that statement required me to first become my own strongest supporter and advocate. I had also taught him, money is not important compared to family love. Now I understood with painful clarity that when love becomes a tool for manipulation and extortion, money can at least purchase back some measure of dignity and self-respect. 2 months after the wedding that changed everything, I declined all requests for media interviews and television appearances. Instead, I used the proceeds from selling the Malibu villa to establish a charitable foundation, specifically designed to provide legal assistance and psychological counseling to elderly people who had been neglected, abused, or abandoned by their own family members. I returned to teaching, but no longer in traditional high school English classrooms. I began offering popular lecture series at the local community college with a powerful new theme: establishing healthy boundaries. Why loving yourself is the beginning of every meaningful relationship. The sessions were consistently filled to capacity with people hungry. My daily life became busier and more fulfilling than it had been in years. Susan, David, and the former students who rallied to support me became my chosen family. We shared afternoon tea together, discussed the foundation's expanding operations, and exchanged stories about our daily adventures and discoveries. During one of our regular CACC meetings, Susan shared an astounding detail with me. "You should know that the day after the wedding, Brittany actually sent you a text message saying, 'You humiliated us all by not showing up to support Richard.' She genuinely had the audacity to blame you for their embarrassment. It is absolutely incredible how delusional some people can become." I simply smiled peacefully. Some people construct such narrow worlds that they can only see themselves at the center, with everyone else's pain and suffering serving merely as minor inconveniences in their perfect narrative. Richard eventually sent me several lengthy emails filled with elaborate regret, desperate apologies, and various creative explanations for his behavior. He informed me that Brittany had moved back to her parents' mansion, and their marriage was hanging by the thinnest of threads. He pleaded for my forgiveness, and begged that everything could somehow return to the way it used to be between us. I read those emails carefully, feeling neither burning anger nor overwhelming sadness. I crafted a response to his final message, which was also the only one I chose to answer. "Richard, I have received and read your correspondence. It has taken me many years to understand that a mother's primary responsibility is not to accept unlimited accountability for her adult child's life choices, but rather to teach that child how to become a responsible, ethical human being. Clearly, in that fundamental regard, I failed you completely. However, now I am choosing to take full responsibility for my own life and happiness first. Your current situation is the direct result of your own decisions, and you need to face and repair the consequences yourself. I will not forgive you because your actions do not require my forgiveness to become somehow acceptable. They were simply wrong, period. I will not hate you either because I have far more important and meaningful things to do with the remainder of my life than waste energy on hatred. I genuinely hope you find a way to live well, but our paths have now diverged permanently in different directions." I clicked send and then permanently deleted his contact information from all my devices. On that particular day in New York, while the wedding ceremony was taking place 3,000 miles away, I did not go shopping or sightseeing like a typical tourist. Instead, I spent the afternoon in the magnificent reading room of the New York Public Library, surrounded by the quiet whispers of turning pages and scholarly concentration. I immersed myself in the poetry of Walt Whitman as golden sunlight streamed through the tall, majestic windows, illuminating both the pages before me and something fundamental within my own spirit. There was one particular line of poetry that I read repeatedly, each time discovering new layers of meaning. I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. Yes, I, Evelyn Moore, a 67-year-old retired teacher, a mother who was once systematically erased and abandoned. This body, this mind, this place in the world is absolutely enough. More than enough. It is everything. That is the end of our story for today. We hope you enjoyed this journey of love and vengeance. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Your insights and perspectives are what make our community truly special. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel to stay updated on the next captivating tale from Love Vengeance. Each like and share helps us continue to bring you stories that resonate. Thank you for spending your time with us. Until next time, take care and keep those stories close to your heart.